Alright guys, today we'll discuss about emotional intelligence. I guess you guys heard about this book by the Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, which published in 2009. Okay, as usually I pick up some random, seems like interesting chapter and not just reading but also giving my sexy ass comments. Alright, so the second chapter, An Anatomy of an Emotional Hijacking. Life is a comedy for those who think, and a tragedy for those who feel. It's interesting. This quote by Horace Walpole, which is kind of actually interesting. In other words, the author opinion that like if you got a brain and smart, things becoming fun, and for those who are more like emotional, that's not fun. Okay, but it's like at the end of the day depends on the context, personality. But yeah, it's definitely interesting point of view. Okay. It was a hot August afternoon in 1963, the same day that Rev. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech to a civil rights march on Washington. On that day, Richard Robles, a seasoned burglar who had just been paroled from like a 3-year sentence for the more than 100 break-ins he had pulled to support a heroin habit, decided to do one more. He wanted to renounce crime, Robles later claimed, but he desperately needed money for his girlfriend and their 3-year-old daughter. Okay. In this year 1963, some shit happens and this motherfucker decided to commit a crime because of his fucked up situation. Okay, the apartment he broke into that day belonged to two young women: 21-year-old Janice Willey, a researcher at Newsweek magazine, and 23-year-old Emily Hoffert, a grade school teacher. Although Robles chose the apartment of New York's swanky Upper East Side to burglarize because he thought no one would be there, Willie was home. Threatening her with a knife, Robles tied her up. As he was leaving, Hoffert came home. To make good his escape, Robles began to tie her up too. So in other words, he was picking up randomly some house. I don't think so that he was as a professional was at least making some research before trying to find pattern of life in order to find out when exact a schedule moment when the owners leaving their house. But okay, whatever, he decided to rob this house, and oops, there's this girls living there. He tying them. Okay, I don't know how the fuck this related with this emotional intelligence, but okay, let's see. As Robles tells the tale years later, while he was tying up Hoffer, Janice Willey warned him he would not get away with this crime. She would remember his face and help the police track him down. Oh, this motherfucker was not even wearing a mask. I mean, so fucking dumb. Okay. Robles, who had promised himself this was to have been his last burglary, panicked at that, completely losing control. In a frenzy, he grabbed a soda bottle and clapped the woman until they were unconscious. Then, wash in rage and fear, he slashed and stabbed them over and over with a kitchen knife. Holy fucking shit. Yeah, very fucking dumb. Looking back on that moment, some 25 years later, Robles lamented, I just went bananas. My head just exploded. Yeah, like desperate situation, plus on top of that, dumb. Yeah, in other words, low IQ, high energy. So, to this day, Robles has lots of time to regret those few minutes of rage unleashed. Now I see where author is going with this, like introduction. Let's say it. That I guess the point is that if you like lacking self-control, emotional intelligence, and you get angry so easily, you can pay really like a big price for this shit. At this writing, he's still in prison some 3 decades later for what became known as the career girl murders. Such emotional explosions and neural hijackings. At those moments, evidence suggests a center in the limbic brain proclaims an emergency, recruiting the rest of the brain to its urgent agenda. The hijacking occurs in an instant, triggering this reaction crucial moments before the neocortex, the thinking brain, has had a chance to glimpse fully what is happening, let alone decide if it's a good idea. The hallmark of such like a hijack is that once the moment passes, those so possessed have the sense of not knowing what came over them. In other words, simply put it, the moment when you lose this kind of like self-control, the like logical part of your brain kind of leaving the chat, and you just later realized what kind of shit you'd done. It's like explained in this like neurochemical level. Okay, for now it sounds interesting, and yeah. In general, emotional intelligence. I mean, first of all, I guess in general, people in general linking the word intelligence just with the IQ, but we gotta understand that there are 3 types of intelligence: general intelligence, which is like education, school, shit that you're getting from that kind of places, and after it goes emotional intelligence, and the third one, social intelligence. All right, so let's continue our interesting reading. So, these hijacks, by no means isolated horrific incidents, that lead to brutal crimes, like the career girl murders. I think I read this shit. Okay. These hijacks are by no means isolated horrific incidents that lead to brutal crimes like the career girl murders. In less catastrophic form, but not necessarily less intense, they happen to us with fair frequency. Think back to the last time you so-called lost it, blowing up at someone, your spouse or like child, or perhaps the driver of another car. to a degree that later, with like some reflection and hindsight, seemed uncalled for. Probability that to such a hijacking a neural takeover, which as we shall see, originates in the amygdala, a center in the limbic brain. In other words, seems like this amygdala motherfucker, the center of this emotional, I don't know, let's call it emotional source. Not all limbic hijackings distressing. When a joke strikes someone as so uproarious that their laughter is almost explosive, that too is a limbic response. So in other words, amygdala, it's not just doing crazy stupid shit like in terms of emotional way, but also it's like the source of like something positive. When you see some stupid meme and you're laughing, all right. It is at work also in moments of intense joy. When Dan Jansen, after several heartbreaking failures to capture an Olympic gold medal for like a speed skating, which we had voted to do for his like a dying sister, finally won the gold in the 1,000-meter race in the 1994 Winter Olympics in Norway. His wife was so overcome by the excitement and happiness that she had to be rushed to emergency physicians at ringside. Interesting. So in other words, even something positive, if it's like too much, it gives you it can make you fucked up, like in terms of I don't know, maybe it could be the situation when the meme's so fucking hilarious that you laughing and dying in hospital. All right, it seems like interesting. So the next title, which called The Seed of All Passion. In humans, the amygdala, from the Greek word for almond, is an almond-shaped cluster of like interconnected structures perched above the brain's stem near the bottom of the limbic ring. And there are two amygdalas, one on each side of the brain, nestled toward the side of the head. Interesting. So there are like a bunch of amygdalas. The human amygdala is relatively large compared to that in any of our closest evolutionary cousins, like the primates. Oh, monkeys also got amygdala. Okay. The hippocampus and the amygdala were the two key parts of the primitive nose brain that in evolution gave rise to the cortex and then the neocortex. To this day, these limbic structures do much or most of the brain's learning and remembering. The amygdala is the specialist for emotional matters. If the amygdala is severe from the rest of the brain, the result is a striking inability to gauge the emotional significance of events. In other words, amygdala kind of rate the emotional level of the situation. It is kind of giving you signals like, hey, you can laugh. Hey, you should cry. Okay. This condition is sometimes called quote-unquote affective blindness. Lacking emotional weight, encounters lose their hold. One young man whose amygdala had been surgically removed to control severe seizures became completely uninterested in people, preferring to sit in isolation with no human contact. Interesting. So, lacking amygdala, like also remove desire to connect with people. Interesting. So while he was perfectly capable of conversation, he no longer recognized close friends, relatives, or even his mother, and remained impassive in the face of their anguish at his indifference. So in other words, it also fucks with your memory or something. Without an amygdala, he seemed to have lost all recognition of feeling as well as any feeling about feelings. Interesting. So even though maybe he was like able to recognize someone, he had not like a feeling of, oh, this is my friend, you know. The amygdala acts as a storehouse of emotional memory and those of significance itself. Life without amygdala is a life stripped of personal meanings. Yeah, because that's really actually fucked up. Like if you cannot feel anything like joy, sadness, you don't have any ups and downs, and like especially when you like accomplishing something, it's not just about getting like a physical reward, but also like in terms of emotions. Yeah. More than affection is tied to the amygdala, all passion depends on it. Animals that have their amygdala removed or like severe lack fear and rage lose the urge to compete or cooperate and no longer have any sense of their place in their kind's social order. Yeah, it's like also correlated with testosterone and yeah, it's like sort of, pardon my French, but I think also related with horniness. So if you're a boy and God forbid you don't have amygdala, you can get horny, and what's the point? Oopsie doopsie. Okay. Emotion is blunted or absent. Tears, an emotional signal unique to humans, are triggered by the amygdala and nearby structure, the cingulate gyrus, what the fuck is that? Being held, stroked, or otherwise comforted through these same brain regions, stopping the sobs. Without an amygdala, there are no tears of sorrow to soothe. Bunch of fucking academic terms, but okay. Lacking amygdala fucks with your emotions. I get it. Okay. Joseph Leduc, a neuroscientist at the Center for like a neuroscience at New York University, was the first to discover the key role of the amygdala in the emotional brain. Leduc is a part of a fresh breed of neuroscientists who draw on innovative methods and technologies that bring a previously unknown level of like precision to mapping the brain at work, and so can lay like a bare mysteries of mind that earlier generations of like a scientists have found impenetrable. His finding on the circuitry of the emotional brain overthrow a long-standing notion about the limbic system, putting the amygdala at the center of the action and placing other limbic structures in very different roles. The doc's research explains how the amygdala can take control over what we do when. Okay, it's interesting, but let's try to find something practical in terms of emotional intelligence so we can control ourselves and be better at this. Okay, seems like this chapter much more practical, let's call it. And this is chapter 4, which called Know Thyself. Or simply put it, know yourself. A belligerent samurai, an old Japanese tale goes, once challenged as a Zen master to explain the concept of heaven and hell. But the monk replied with a scorn, "You're nothing but a lout. I can't waste my time with likes of you." His very honor attacked the samurai flew into a rage and pulling his sword from its scabbard yelled, "I would kill you for your impertinence." "That," the monk calmly replied, "is hell." Yeah, this fucking 15th century vocabulary. Okay, startled at seeing the truth in what the master pointed out about the fury that had him in its grip, the samurai calmed it down, sneaked his sword, and bowed, thanking the monk for the insight. Okay, it seems like that's author's style to give some metaphorical some story, and after explained by this story his point of view, which is actually makes sense because we as a people like stories, and if we connect stories with the practical tips, why not? Okay, the sudden awakening of the samurai to his own agitated state illustrates a crucial difference between being caught up in a feeling and becoming aware that you're being swept away by it. Yeah, because just because you have a self-control in terms of emotions, it does not mean that people in other words, if you see someone and he or she doesn't get angry, that doesn't mean that this person don't have that kind of feeling at all. We all have it. It's just the point of emotional intelligence that you notice that feeling, but you able to not let it control over you. So that's the difference between people who not able to notice and they immediately let that feeling to take over them. Okay, Socrates' injunction, know thyself, speaks to this a keystone of emotional intelligence, awareness of one's own feelings as they occur. In other words, again, the ability to notice not just your own feeling, I feel this, I'm happy, I'm angry, but also you gotta be able to notice these kind of feelings in terms of other emotions when you communicating. Instead of reacting, you notice, for example, this person in front of you, let's say during a job interview, he or she angry, and instead of again judging someone, you just logically labeling what exact emotion you see, because I guess the point is it will give you an opportunity to deal with this situation logically. It might seem at first glance that our feelings are obvious, more like a thoughtful reflection reminds us of like at times we have been all too oblivious to what we really felt about something, or awoke to these feelings late in the game. Psychologists use the rather ponderous term metacognition to refer to an awareness of thought process. And meta motu mean awareness of one's own emotions. I prefer the term self-awareness in the sense of an ongoing attention to like one's internal states. And in this, like a self-reflexive awareness, mind observes and investigates experience itself, including the emotions. Okay. This quality of awareness is akin to what Freud, I guess I pronounced this philosopher name or psychologist name correctly, described as an evenly hovering attention, and which he commended to those who would do psychoanalysis. Such attention takes in whatever passes through awareness with impartiality as an interested yet interactive witness. Some psychoanalysts call it the observing ego, the capacity of self-awareness that allows the analyst to monitor his own reactions. Yeah, I like this statement, to monitor your own reaction. Yeah, to what the patient is saying, and which is the process of free association nurtures in the patient. Yeah, you're kind of developing your own observer inside of you in order to. It's not. How can I say? It's not like a dictatorship style control. It's a relaxed focus, let's call it, when you notice and you try to put in a direction that you want to, but it's not like very like a super strict shut up emotion way control. Such self-awareness would seem to require an activated neocortex, particularly the language areas attuned to identify and name the emotions being aroused. Self-awareness is not an attention that gets carried away by emotions, overreacting and amplifying what is perceived. Rather, it is like a neutral mode that maintains self reflectiveness even amidst turbulent emotions. And William Sterron seems to be describing something like this faculty of mine in writing of his a deep depression, telling of a sense of being accompanied by a second self, a wraith-like observer who, not sharing the dementia of his double, is able to watch with dispassionate curiosity as his companion struggles. So it's kind of, yeah, his point is it's kind of like having two personalities, but one personality like a boss who wanna control other kid inside of you, which is emotional, and the boss, I guess, it's a logical brain. Okay, at its best, self-observation allows just such equanimous awareness of a passionate or a turbulent feelings. At a minimum, it manifests itself simply as a slight slight stepping back from experience, it parallels like a stream of consciousness that is meta, hovering above or beside the main flow, aware of what is like happening rather than being immersed and lost in it. It is the difference between, for example, being murderously enraged at someone and having this self-reflexive thought. This is anger I'm feeling. Even as you are enraged. Yeah, it's kind of reminding me. I guess it's relevant joke when someone telling like something stop at me to hit someone today, and his friend asking like who stopped at you, and he responded like a self-control. Ha ha ha. Yeah, but yeah, I get the point. Like again, it is not about like you turn off emotion. It is about being intelligent in terms of like noticing emotions and letting emotions out, which is productive, useful, healthy. In terms of the neural mechanics of awareness, this subtle shift in like mental activity presumably signals that now cortical circuits are actively monitoring the emotion. And a first step in gaining some control. And this awareness of emotions is the fundamental emotional competence on which others, such as emotional self-control, build. And self-awareness, in short, means being aware of both our mood and our thoughts about that mood. Yeah, it's like a thinking about thinking. In other words, whatever like idea pops up in your mind, you're not just like a blind accepting, but you putting like a distance between you and your idea in order to assess it like a stranger at the street. And that allows you to like understand like this worth to pay attention to, or it's like not productive and stupid. In the words, self-awareness in short means being aware of both our mood and our thoughts about that mood. In the words of John Mayer, a University of New Hampshire psychologist who, with Yale's like a Peter Salovey, is a co-formulator of the theory of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness can be non-reactive, non-judgmental attention to inner states, but Mayer finds that this sensibility also can be less equanimous. Typical thoughts be speaking emotional. Self-awareness include I should not feel this way. I'm thinking good things to cheer up. And for more restricted self-awareness, the fleeting thought, do not think about it in reaction to something highly upsetting. Yeah, it's like kind of also about ability to like the way how you handling managing your own like a self-awareness, emotional intelligence. I guess one of the ways like using your inner voice to put it into a direction that you want to, instead of like being spontaneous with it. Although there is a logical distinction between being aware of feelings and action to change them, Mayer finds that for all practical purposes, the two usually go hand in hand. To recognize a full mood is to want to get out of it, and this recognition, however, is distinct from the efforts we make to keep from acting on emotional impulse. When we say stop that to a child whose anger has led him to hit a playmate, we may stop the hitting but the anger still simmers. The child's thoughts are still fixated on the trigger for the anger. But he stole my toy, and the anger continues unabated. Self-awareness has more powerful effect on like a strong aversive feelings. The realization this is anger I'm feeling offers a greater degree of freedom, and not just the option not to act on it, but the added option to try to let go of it. So it's like a good example of when you labeling your emotions and you decide like to let it to let express yourself or to skip it. Mayer finds that people tend to fall into like a distinctive styles for attending and dealing with their emotions. Okay, first we see self-aware, aware of their moods as they're having them. These people understandably have some like sophistication about their emotional lives. Their clarity about emotions may undergeared other personality traits. They're autonomous and sure of their like own boundaries, in good psychological health, and tend to have a positive outlook on life. When they get into like a bad mood, they don't ruminate and obsess about it and able to get out of it sooner. In short, their mindfulness helps them manage their emotions. Yeah, again, like instead of blindly following your emotions, like if you feel upset and you're becoming upset, yeah, in other words, just because you feel upset, it doesn't mean that you have to become upset. You can manage this emotion. Okay, let's continue. So before we discussed about different distinctive styles for attending to and dealing with their emotions, we discussed about self-awareness. So now we will discuss about engulfed, I guess. Okay, these are people who often feel swamped by their emotions and helpless to escape them, as as though their moods have taken charge. They are mercurial and not very aware of their feelings, so that they are lost in them rather than having some perspective. So, in other words, kinda, let's call it emotionally blind. It's hard, I guess, for them, kind of like even label what emotion they have. As a result, they do little to try to escape bad moods, feeling that they have no control over their emotional life. They often feel overwhelmed and emotionally out of control. So, okay, that's interesting. The next one, accepting. While these people are often clear about what they're feeling, they also tend to be accepting of their moods, and so don't try to change them. Interesting. So the first one was about like self-aware, that they able to manage and like instead of accepting, they just they like labeling whatever emotion they got, and after they putting emotions into a direction that they want to. Okay, and previously it was like let's call emotionally blind people. They even can't, like these motherfuckers can't even like a name what emotion they got. And the third one, I guess, like these motherfuckers like just give up and say like whatever, I feel upset, therefore I'm upset, I guess. Okay, let's read more about these accepting people. While these people are often clear about what they're feeling, they also tend to be accepting of their moods and so don't try to change them. So yeah, they just fucking give up. There seem to be like two branches of the accepting type. Those who are usually in good moods and so have little motivation to change them, and people who, despite their clarity about their moods, are susceptible to bad ones, but accept them with a laissez-faire attitude, doing nothing to change them, despite their distress. A pattern found among, say, depressed people who are resigned to their despair. Interesting. So there are different levels, and most people in general positive, and I guess it's not a big deal for them sometimes be sad, let's say, but vice versa, other people who mostly sad, they kind of have emotional intelligence in terms of like labeling, but they have a hard time to, but maybe even they don't want to and they like accepting it. I mean, if there would be like a magic button, I guess no matter personality, they just will press it, like, constantly having happiness. But yeah, it's just about the way how you manage your emotions. Okay, the next title, The Passionate and the Indifferent. Imagine for a moment that you're on an airplane flying from New York to like San Francisco. It's been a smooth flight, but as you approach the Rockies, the pilot's voice come over the plane intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, there is some turbulence ahead. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. And then the plane hits the turbulence, which is rougher than you have ever endured. The airplane is tossed up and down and side to side like a beach ball in the waves. Okay, how does this have something to do with emotional intelligence? The question is, what do you do? Are you the kind of person who buries yourself in your book or magazine or continues watching the movie tuning out the turbulence, which is, I guess, I'm that kind of personality. In general, okay, you worrying about it, and does that help to the situation? Especially during this kind of when you're in a plane, you almost got a zero control, and it's emotionally, I think it's more useful just no matter the situation to put your thoughts to distract yourself to something positive, because otherwise you get more emotional and you're losing logical brain. Okay, or are you likely to take out the emergency card and review the precautions? Or watch the flight attendants to see if they show signs of panic? Or strain to hear the engines to see if there's anything worrisome? Which of these responses comes more naturally to us is a sign of our favored attentional stance under duress. The airplane scenario itself is an item from a psychological test developed by Susan Miller. Interesting. So, just by asking this kind of a story context, plain context question, we can figure out with what kind of personality we're dealing, which is again interesting. You're just asking, hey, imagine you're in a plane and there's some emergency, like a turbulence, plane is shaking, what is your response? Would you just like keep doom scrolling, or like reading, or like be keep being busy with your own stuff, or you will panic? Okay, but yeah, people also, it's, I mean, some people pretend to be like, I guess, confident and say no, like I don't give a fuck, but actually they give a fuck. Okay, a psychologist at Temple University to assess whether people tend to be vigilant, tending carefully to every detail of distressing predicament, or in contrast, like deal with such anxious moments by trying to distract themselves. These two attentional stances toward distress have very different consequences for how people experience their own emotional reactions. Those who tune in under duress can, by the very act of attending carefully, unwittingly amplify the magnitude of their own reactions, especially if their tuning in is devoid of the equanimity of self-awareness. The result is that their emotions seem all the more intense. Those who tune out, who distract themselves, notice less about their own reactions, and so minimize the experience of their emotional response, if not the size of the response itself. At the extremes, this means that for some people, emotional awareness is overwhelming, while for others, it barely exists. I think it's in general, like, if I like the idea, not the idea, but like in general, we all have it, like logical brain and emotional brain. And if person more logical, he kind of lack, I guess, emotional intelligence, which could be actually, I guess, helpful in terms of like a extreme situation, because it's like you're not allowing to your emotions to take over you, and you able to handle the situation in a calm, logical way. But also, in another hand, I guess these kind of people less empathetic, and they could look too cold for others. Okay, consider the college student who, like, one evening spotted a fire that had broken out in his like a dorm. Went to get a fire extinguisher and put the fire out. Nothing unusual, except that on his way to get the extinguisher, and then on the way back to the fire, he walked instead of running. The reason? He didn't feel there was any urgency. Yeah. In other words, yeah, it's kind of another extreme way when like a person too logical and too chill. That is like the end of the world, but you calmly asking like, what's for breakfast? Yeah, but still, he's doing the right thing. Maybe slowly, but it's much better than like some another person who crying and yelling and do nothing. Yeah, it's kind of should be like a balance, I guess, because it's like a person too logical. It's like, as we can see here, he's not going to be urgent, because maybe he will bring that fire extinguisher, but it's going to be too late. Okay, this story was told to me by Edward Diener at University of Illinois, at Urbana psychologist, who has been studying the like intensity with like which people experience their emotions. The college students stood out in his collection of case studies, as one of the least intense Diener had ever encountered. He was essentially a man without passions, someone who goes through life feeling little or nothing, even about an emergency like a fire. So very fucking chill, logical dude. By contrast, consider a woman at the opposite end of like a dinner spectrum. When she once lost her favorite pen, she was distraught for days. Yeah, that's really fucking tragic. Another time, she was so thrilled on seeing an ad for like a big sale on women's shoes at an expensive store that she dropped what she was doing, hopped in her car, and drove 3 hours to the store in Chicago. Yeah, that's really fucked up. Emotional roller coaster. Yeah, it's like a TikTok brain. Whatever shit pops in your mind, you just blindly following. Diener finds that women in general feel both positive and negative emotions more strongly than do men. Interesting. And sex differences aside, emotional life is richer for those who notice more. For one thing, this enhanced emotional sensitivity means that for like such people, the least provocation unleashes emotional storms, whether heavenly or hellish, while those at the like other extreme barely experience any feeling even under the most dire circumstances. Yeah, again, I guess if you're too emotional, that's not good. If you like almost zero emotional, it's also not good. Again, it's about the right balance. The man without feelings. Gary infuriated his fiancée Ellen because even though he was intelligent, thoughtful, and successful surgeon, Gary was emotionally flat. Yeah, especially if you have this kind of like a major as a surgeon, you gotta be like you better not be emotional because like imagine being a surgeon and dealing with a bunch of like organs and body and yeah, it's I guess like a side effect of like a major, so that's also impacting to you. Also, I heard that programmers also kind of becoming like a robots because of their major, like emotionally flat. Okay, let's read about this story more. Gary was emotionally flat, completely unresponsive to any and all like shows of feelings. And while Gary could speak brilliantly like of science and art when it came to his feelings, even for Ellen, he fell silent. But in terms of woman, you better shut up, I guess. Okay, try as she might to elicit some passion from him, Gary was impassive, oblivious. I don't naturally express my feelings, Gary told to the therapist he saw at Ellen's insistence. When it came to emotional life, he added, I don't know what to talk about. I have no strong feelings, either positive or negative. Interesting. Ellen was not alone in being like, yeah, it seems like Gary related to the second type which we were discussing previously, like in terms of like let's call it emotionally blind people. And yeah, like they're not able even to label emotion like their or others, I guess. That's why. But in another hand, like as a like I don't know, positive side advantage of it, like in another hand, it's like this person more logical. Okay, at his own therapist observes this emotional blankness makes Gary and others like him colorless, bland. they bore everybody. That's why their wives sent them into treatment. I mean, he was not like, how can I say? That's another good question that I don't think so that this happened like after marriage. He should, I guess he was acting the same way before marriage, and why the fuck she get married if she didn't like that he was emotionally flat, you know what I'm saying? But okay, that's another question. Gary's emotional flatness exemplifies what psychiatrists call alexithymia, from the Greek fox, lexis for word, lacking word, and thymos for emotion, like lacking word for emotion, lacking. Okay, simply put it in English, lacking ability to name your emotion, I guess. Okay, such people lack words for their feelings. Indeed, they seem to lack feelings altogether, although this may actually be because of their inability to express emotion rather than from an absence of like emotion altogether. And such people were first noticed by like psychoanalysts, puzzled by a class of patients who were untreatable by that method because they reported no feelings, no fantasies, no colorless dreams. In short, no inner emotional life to talk about at all. Interesting. So, I have another question. Is that like a thing that you can teach, or it's like they literally, biologically, I don't know, DNA or whatever, they can't even comprehend these kind of things at all? Because, I mean, if you're human biologically, I think you should have feeling, but they just, I don't need practice. The clinical features that mark all alexithymics include having difficulty describing feelings, their own or anyone else, and sharply limited emotional vocabulary. What is more, they have trouble discriminating among emotions, as well as between emotion and bodily sensation. So that they might tell of having butterflies in the stomach, palpitations, sweating, and dizziness, but they would not know they are feeling anxious. Interesting. So in other words, they, like maybe some of them are able to notice positive things but not negative. Okay. They give the impression of being different, alien beings, having come from an entirely different world, living in the midst of like society which is dominated by feelings, is a description given by Dr. Peter Sifnes, the Harvard psychiatrist who, in 1972, coined the term alexithymia. Interesting. So yeah, they kind of like are robots who are living between us and they don't have feelings. Maybe they are fucking aliens. Okay, thank you for listening and see you next time.